Hello everyone. I've been making videos on the Trinity and related issues for about 5 years now. And if there's one thing I'm really convinced of, is that this entire issue is not a knowledge problem. It's not that people don't have the right knowledge necessarily. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This is a behavior problem. It's an honesty problem. It's a problem with the behavior of people. The reason I've made these videos up to this point so far is so that people who are looking for the truth will have some resources. So if a Trinitarian brings up John 20:28 or John 1:1 or whatever, they have some resources to, respond if they want, or they have some resources to answer some of the questions they might have. I guess that's the main thing. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's also this idea out there that seems to be very prevalent that if people had the right knowledge, they would accept the truth. Or, if there are people who are a little stubborn, you can have an apologetic debate with them, and sort of back them into a corner with your facts and make them admit to the truth. Folks, that's not how it works. All you need to do is take a look at the example of Jesus and the Pharisees. Who could do it any better than Jesus? There's no man on earth who could have done it any better than Jesus. He was a light to the world, the light of God, his Father. And even then, the Pharisees refused to admit. They refused to confess. And we know what they did. They made up excuses for themselves. And there's no end to that. It wouldn't have mattered what facts Jesus had displayed to them. There was just no way they were going to budge. They were not going to accept the truth. And there's a lot of people out there just like that. Lots of them. I see them all the time. And not just, on my channel. I see them all over the place. Talking, in various venues. On the internet. And in life outside the internet. I've gotten to the point where I can see these people coming a mile away. And you won't find honesty in these people. I know that there are people out there who believe in this doctrine of the Trinity because they were told to. And that's why I make these videos, because some of these people are good people. And honest people, and if they knew the truth and they saw it, they would accept it. But I also know that there's a large, population out there. I don't want to speculate, on what percentage of the population it is, but it's big. You can't tell them anything. And, so the videos I've made so far are just for those people who have an ear to hear. Do you ever think about why Jesus said that? Or he made that statement? He who has an ear to hear, let him hear. Because he knew some people just don't want to hear. Or as Paul said, they will only gather teachers around them who tickle their itching ears. Tell me what I want to hear. A lot of people like that. And the Pharisees were like that. Jesus was not telling them what they wanted to hear. That's why one big reason they did not like him. They hated him. And as Jesus said, if they hated me, they hated my Father also. These were God haters who claimed that, their Father was God in John 8. And that's why Jesus responds, with the words, I'd be a liar like you, to them. They were liars. These people had a huge behavior problem. They did not have ears to hear. And Jesus actually talks about that in John 8. And he says, why can't you hear what I'm saying? And then he tells them, it's because you are not of God. If you are a Christian led by the Spirit of God, you're going to see these people all over the place. They're everywhere. And they're going to behave much like these Pharisees. And they're going to think that you can't see right through them. I imagine the Pharisees thought the same thing. They probably thought, that Jesus can't, see right through us, but he obviously could. I mean, really, any honest person could. They were corrupt. And I see this all the time. You ever see a liar in court? He's lying, right? But he thinks he can just keep playing that game, and he can keep making excuses and rationalizations for himself, and you kind of got to catch him, right? But in a court of law, there's a jury. And if the jury thinks he's lying, he's done for. You see, and that's why people like the Pharisees, they had no judge or jury who were going to convict them. And so they thought they were going to get away with this kind of behavior. They kind of forgot about Judgment Day. And the same is true of people today. They think they can pull these stunts and get away with it because they're only thinking about you and getting away with it with you. But on Judgment Day, that's just not going to work for them, is it? Those little games are going to all come to light. And no matter what they told themselves or how they deceived themselves, it's not going to matter. What they have done is going to be manifest. So one of the things I've been thinking about lately is how I make videos in the future. And I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit. I'm still going to continue making some of the kinds of videos I've been making. But I want to start making some more videos that speak to this behavior problem that you so commonly see. So common. When the controversy broke out in the 4th century, and Arius was fighting with Alexander, kind of before Athanasius got into the mix. There was Alexander and Arius who were fighting. And the thing that got Alexander really mad was that those Arians were saying that they could be sons of God like Jesus. That really ticked off Alexander. That's what he writes about in his deposition against the Arians, or against Arius. He's smoking mad about this. And he betrays himself. Because Arius was right, if that's indeed what Arius was saying. I don't know whether Arius was right or wrong about everything else. I don't think we'll ever really know what he really taught. But on that point, that's true. God is our own Father because he begat us. We are born of God, John says. True believers are people who have died to this world. They were born of natural parents, etc., but they chose to die to that life, to live a new and different life, a life where they were born of God, and God is their Father, begotten of God. That's what Jesus is talking to Nicodemus about. To be born again, born from above, born of God. John uses that phrase several times, by the way. And a really big deception you'll see, in English translations, very common, is they'll take the same Greek word when it's referring to Jesus and translate it as begotten. But when it's referring to Christians, they'll translate it as born. It's the same word. Begotten, born, same thing. For example, look at Matthew 1:2. Abraham begat Isaac. Isaac begat Jacob. Jacob begat Judah, etc. And if you read some other translations, it'll say Abraham fathered Isaac. Isaac fathered Jacob. So you can see, it's very clear what this word means, to beget. It's like the English word born. So when you see Jesus talking about being born again, he's talking about being begotten again. Begotten of God. Same word. Abraham begat Isaac. Or at John 3:6, flesh begets flesh, spirit begets spirit. Same Greek word. And that's why God is our own Father. Like God was Jesus Christ's own Father. Believers died to this world so they could be begotten of God by the Spirit, just like Jesus was begotten of God by the Spirit. So we died to that life into which we were born of our natural human parents. Now our natural father is God, because we died to that old life for a new life. And that's why Peter will say things like, Christians are partakers of the divine nature. 2 Peter 1:4. God is our own Father. That's an undeniable fact of Scripture. If we are true Christians, and we've been truly born again, and born of God, God is our own Father. I mean, how could you say you are not truly His Son if you're born of God? How could you? But you know how many times I've heard Trinitarians say they are not? This is what they'll do for that idol, that Trinity idol. In the Bible, in John, we see that Jesus called God's only begotten Son. Now it's kind of funny, Trinitarians sometimes will say this word doesn't mean only begotten, especially when John 1:18 is in view. But when they're talking about John 3:16, all of a sudden this same word seems to become, or it seems to mean only begotten again. And, so they're talking out of both sides of their mouth quite commonly on this. And they'll say, you can't possibly be God's begotten Son. That's impossible. Jesus is the only begotten Son of God. Therefore, you can't be a begotten Son of God. Do you ever stop and think about that? They're saying the phrase, Jesus is the only begotten Son means that only Jesus is God's begotten Son. Well, if that's true, how come John 17:3 doesn't mean only the Father is the only true God? It's the same thing. Do you see how they talk out of both sides of their mouth? They'll say the statement, Jesus is the only begotten Son, means only Jesus is God's begotten Son. Well, at John 17:3, they'll say the same kind of language does not mean that only the Father is the only true God. This is how you know you've got dishonest people on your hands. When you see things like this, or at least someone who's very confused, but usually it means they're being dishonest. When you have a firstborn son, he's an only begotten son. Right? The first one is the only begotten. And if you check all the places where it says Jesus is God's only begotten, it's referring to that time frame before he died. Jesus died on the cross so that he might be the firstborn of many brothers. The Bible says that. Romans 8:29. Also says that in Hebrews 2. That we're his brothers because we're all born of God. Brothers and sisters of Jesus. And God is our Father. He was the only begotten. God sent his only begotten to the cross so that he might be the firstborn of many brothers after he rose from the dead. Do you know how many Trinitarians I've run into who will flatly deny that they're begotten of God, which means exactly the same thing as being born of God. And they'll do this for the sake of the Trinity. It's shameful. It's almost sickening just to watch it. And they claim to be Christians. The Spirit testifies to our spirit that we are children of God. The Spirit of God. Spirit begets spirit. You must be begotten again. Or born again. Same thing. So God is our own Father, if we are, in fact, born of God. So if God is our own Father, what's going to happen? What happened when Jesus called God his own Father? For this reason, therefore, the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because he was not only breaking the Sabbath, but he was also calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Are you prepared to say God is your own Father? What did Jesus do? Here's what he said. But he answered them, my Father is working until now, and I myself am working. He called God his Father. Do you? Are you born of God? Do you even relate to John 5:18? Does it even register? Does the Spirit testify to your spirit that you truly are a child of God, born of God, begotten of God? Does that happen? The Jews were seeking to kill Jesus because he called God his own Father. What do you think when you read that passage? I know what you think if you're a Trinitarian. That God is your own Father doesn't even register in your mind. The light doesn't even go on. Right? But if you're a true child of God, born of God, then you would see, wait a minute, God is my own Father. What would they have done to me? And Jesus talks a lot about that as well. If they hated me, they're going to hate you. Because you are not of this world, as I am not of this world. You see, the only people who are not of this world are people who have died to it. People who are born of God. And because they're born of God, they're like Jesus, who was not of this world. Because he was born of God. Will you call God your own Father? What do you think? Do you make excuses and start rationalizing for yourself? Or do you confess that God is your own Father and that you were born of God? And that's why you call God your own Father. Because he begat you anew to a new life, resurrection life, dwelling inside you. And so that you might walk according to that spirit of resurrection life. Just as Jesus walked. Just as Jesus walked. Because if we don't walk as Jesus walked, we can't be his disciple. He said so. And how are you going to walk as Jesus walked unless you were begotten of God, born of God? Alexander hated that anyone might say that they could be a son of God like Jesus. And that is the basis of your Trinity doctrine. Go read it. That's how the fight erupted. They didn't tell you that, did they? Jesus called God his own Father. Will you? May God bless you.